Sand Hallow 2023, it's one of my favorite places. I love how it's right there on the reservoir. Lots of sand, rocks, you're close to town if you break, you got cell phone communication. It's just an awesome place to wheel. We have about 15 Jeeps in the group. The blue CJ here is Matt Trevino. Normally on right-hand turn, you stay right close to that wall and let your right front tire start climbing up on that wall. And as it starts to come up, it'll bring that driver's side kind of down in that groove, and you should walk right up. The different wheelbases react differently. So he slid over a little bit to the driver's side and took a completely different path up through there, and that worked for him. Matt knows this Jeep well. He knows right where the tipping point is. You can see he can get a tire off the ground. Hangs out there. He just knows the feel of that Jeep. We got through right-hand turn, and you can see somebody broke an axle. Right where the U-joint comes together, broke that axle. And then you can see also the ball joint started to pull out. There's an incredible amount of stress that comes onto these parts, especially when you put bigger tires. The torque in there is just incredible. This vehicle belongs to Brent. This is up at the top of Milt's Mile, and he got his wheel underneath an undercut and was pinned in there. When we started pulling on it, it actually pinned that tire in there more, and he had a weak spot in the front drive line and it snapped. We have such awesome stuff on the trail anymore to work with. We hooked onto him with a winch, and 12,000-pound winch, and it bottomed the winch out because that wheel was stuck in there under the rock. So we put a block and tackle in, used a soft shackle from Yankum ropes, and used Yankum ropes block, and put the winch rope, which is also a Yankum ropes winch rope, and went through that pulley back to the bumper. And I should say it's really not a pulley, it's a solid piece of billet aluminum that's machined for that cable to go through. And every time you go through and come back to yourself, you actually double the pulling power of your winch. And you're going to see the difference here. Same winch, same pull, and now it brings that vehicle right out of the hole.
I keep looking at that lake down there. I was going to go boating.
What am I doing in the middle of the desert right now? Let me know.
Maybe we should
That is so true. Hey, our Airbnb has a pool. Just saying.
Ours actually does too. It's just not very big.
Ours is small, yeah.
It's smart to keep the recovery gear out because we needed it again. Brent couldn't get through, so Bob went through it and was going to try a different angle and see if he could get through. Bob had the same issue on the wall that Brent did. His bumper and fender were hitting before the tire got up. So we ditched the idea of straight pull with the winch and went right through the block and tackle because we had already been through that and knew the winch wasn't going to pull it by itself. And now you can see here, it pulls it right out. These soft shackles are so nice. You can hook to anything. And then the knot on the end of the soft shackle holds itself in the loop so it doesn't slide off. I just love to watch a cable slide through these blocks. There's just no friction. We did put a thermometer on once and it got to about 115 degrees at a real heavy pull, so it's not damaging the rope at all. We also put a cable up on the side of this Jeep just so when we pulled up out of there it didn't tip down in on the driver's side. We wanted to pull on the low side and try and pull that out of the V in that rock. That's why we didn't hook up on the upside. It's just fascinating to watch that cable slide through that block. So this is the same spot that Brent and Bob got stuck in and got their fenders and bumpers up against the wall before the tire would climb out. I'm in there with Yealous, only I have kind of an unfair advantage because I have the rear steer. And the idea with that rear steer is to position that back end so that the front end can hit where it needs to hit on the obstacle.
There's the shackles like ropes. Oh.
You make that first turn in there, and then you got to get your back end high up on that rock. You can see when you do that, that brings your passenger side down though, and you just barely miss the wall on your passenger side. So you don't want to steer too high on the rear, but just enough to get your back end going up on that wall. Once you kind of get through that point, you let that right front tire start to climb up on that wall, and then you approach the wall in front of you that everybody was getting hung up on. You can see the articulation there as that right rear tire really drops down in that hole, and the right front sucks right up just as the driver's side hits that wall. That's some serious torque on that front end when that driver's side's pulling the whole front end up like that. Once you get that one tire up on top though, then it's kind of a cakewalk, and the rest just kind of follows up through. This is the next section, and it looked like it would be pretty easy, and it should be, but I was not paying attention to my front end, and I got up on the wall there on the driver's side and the passenger and was running a good line, and I was listening to Matt guide me on the back with the rear, and I had the rear right in position, but I wasn't thinking with both the front and the rear, and as the front started to go forward, I was paying too much attention to the back, and that right front tire slid off down into that crevice and got me wedged down in there. Very simple thing to crawl through, and yet I messed it up and let my front end drop down in there. I should have stopped and said, now let's all get on the same page here so I know what I'm doing as a driver, so I can keep my front end as well as my back end up on that wall. But as it was, we had to get a couple winches on me, 2 on the driver's side to keep it from tipping over when they were pulling up on the passenger side, and then we walked right out.
Bad back there. The wheels. It's just like whack.
Here's a couple photos that Leroy Baxter took. Turned out really awesome. Just the different colors in the rock. Watching this on a video, I mean, it looks steep, but not like when you're in the driver's seat and you're climbing up it. It's amazing the traction you get with a sticky tire on that rock, especially when the rock's dry. It's just incredible. This is an obstacle called You Gotta Be Nuts, and Bob drove right up through it.
That takes some driving.
So did Gillette and a couple other Jeeps. I felt bad because I was guiding on this one. He got his right rear down in the V. I should have stopped him and had him back up a little more because he couldn't see that. I didn't think it would end up this way. I thought he would go up through it, but as it was, he got stuck there on his right rear corner. Didn't do much damage, but we did have to get a winch on him and get him pulled back down. I always say smoking's a bad habit to pick up. And if you're smoking in a Jeep, it's because you were at a very vertical angle. The stress and the torque on these vehicles, like I said, is incredible. We get that down and he's trying to turn and he can't turn. Once the vehicle starts to move, even with hydraulic assist and hydraulic steering, it still pins that steering sometimes till other things move. Lunch break. This is part of the group. This is me and my daughter Kesley, who joined me on this trip. Like I say, this stuff is steeper than it looks. He drove right up it. The next Jeep, he was looking really good, but you can see how steep it is. Every time you head down backwards like that, you run the risk of something going wrong. And that bouncing that's happening up there on the top, sometimes that can end wrong as well. This is a place called On Top of the World. And as you can see, there's lots of directions there to different parts of the world. You kind of feel like you're on top. You've drove through sand for a few miles, getting up that high, and you're kind of at a high point out there. People leave stuff up there on top of the world. There was a baseball bat and some golf balls, so they were having fun trying to hit the ball. They about wore their shoulders out before they actually hit it. Trying to hit a golf ball with a baseball bat's actually harder than you think. We did go and recover the balls that were hit and brought them back up and put them under the On Top of the World sign. There, he finally got a hold of that one. We're still up on the maze here. I've gone down this several times, but this is the first time we ran it backwards. Coming up, I got almost to the top, wasn't paying attention and run my rear tire right into that rock. But this is where rear steer really comes in nice. I back up just a little bit and then I can turn both the rear and the front towards the passenger side and just kind of crab walk sideways and go around it. You just slowly start sliding and the tires warm up the rock and gets a little bit warmer and then grabs traction and goes. This is up on the fallen and Bob got in a little bit of trouble and was repositioning to hit the obstacle again, and next thing we know, Bob's on his side. But at least it was the same side he scraped up yesterday, so it's all on the same side. Bob did bank it up through there. Matt came up through, made it up through as well. The right rear tire gets stuck in a hole and you have to bump it to get up over that hole. Once you get up over that hole, then it's just crawling through the rest of it.
It will now. He's in the V. You're good.
There is an advantage when you're not the first one through the obstacle. You kind of learn as you send vehicles through, and then after a couple get through, you kind of know where. The point is, like Bob says, you have to give it the onion. You give it a little bit of gas and kind of let momentum take you up over that hole that's on the lower right there. Give it just a little bit of gas and it will climb up through there. You can see the first time I just tried to creepy crawl through it and the right rear tire got stuck in that hole. So I backed up, and then when I got in that same spot again, just a little bit of momentum helps you go right up through that.
Yes, it is.
I think you
Yeah, if he
I
comes.
think we can do that
I
one
actually
right there.
decided I first tried to go right up this,
Go try to go up that straight ahead
and it
on that
wasn't gonna
line.
work. I was getting a
Nobody's
wheelie
done it
that
yet.
way.
Oh, but I think a guy could go right up.
That's what I was wondering.
You'd have to have somebody
You'd have to have spotters because you wouldn't want to get off that wall.
Well, that's what we were just talking about.
But the rear.
That's right where
Yeah, to keep you on the wall.
that's right where Matt got so tippy.
Hey, we're here. Come this way. Okay, right on.
You know, maybe if he come this way about 12 inches
Get over about 6 inches to your right.
and just put his tire in this little groove right here. Okay, come on.
This is another section on the Fallen. This is one of my favorite trails. You come up through that ravine there,
Okay, right there.
and then you got to straddle that hump in that rock, or you end up down in with your passenger tire down in that crack, and it can get really tippy there.
Okay. Okay.
Should walk up that. Should walk up that.
There's a little notch in that rock, right where you got to be.
Yep.
Nothing. Go straight.
You're gonna turn. Yep. Right
Yeah,
there.
you're gonna pump the
that.
wheelie a little bit right
Okay.
here.
No, he's actually
Right there, just
further
like that.
over.
There you
Ah,
go.
no.
Straight.
Right there.
There you go, right there. Just crawl. Just crawl.
Oh, we don't want to. No.
Back up, back up. We'll get you in that hole and you'll have a problem.
Can you come a little left? Come a little
Yeah,
Yeah.
come a- go, yeah, right there probably. Now come.
Why is that?
I don't know.
Wanna
but it's
pull
sliding
over.
off there.
Okay, now have him come passenger. Passenger, more.
Right there.
Okay, right there.
Right there.
He should crawl right up it now.
Crawl right up.
Ooh. There you go.
Straight up now.
Well, this is going to conclude the first video of Sand Hallow. It's amazing how much fun you can have at 2 miles an hour. Kesley had a good time. Yealous performed well. We're still learning how it runs, how it handles. Some things I'm not quite ready to take it on yet, but getting there. The more I learn how it handles, the more confident I am.